The afternoon light in Columbus, Ohio, was the color of fading gold, soft and heavy, as if it carried the weight of everything Anna Carter could not say. She sat by the window, the hem of her dress twisted between her fingers, watching dry leaves spiral along the sidewalk. Her mother's voice echoed from the kitchen, sharp and impatient, slicing through the quiet like a knife. "Stop daydreaming, Anna. David Trubman will be here at 6. And I won't have you looking like some charity case," Susan Carter said, tapping her manicured nails against the counter. Anna didn't answer. She was 18, barely out of high school, with dreams that still smelled of chalk dust and library books. She had wanted to study early education, to teach children how to read, to have a life shaped by small kindnesses. But her mother saw none of that. To Susan, the world was divided into winners and losers, and she was determined her daughter would not end up like her husband. Paul Carter, sitting quietly at the table with a newspaper he wasn't really reading, looked up. His eyes, gentle, weary, met Anna's for a moment. "Maybe she's not ready, Susan," he said softly. "Not ready." Susan snapped. "She's 18. She doesn't have a scholarship. She doesn't have a plan. David is offering her a life most girls would die for. You think I'll let her throw it away to chase some childish fantasy?" Paul opened his mouth, then closed it again. Years of being talked over had taught him the futility of resistance. Anna looked at him, silently pleading, but he only lowered his gaze. That was when something inside her cracked, a small, invisible fracture that no one heard. Later, in her room, Anna tried one last time. "Mom, please," she whispered. "I don't love him. I barely know him." Susan turned, adjusting her pearl earrings in the mirror. "Love doesn't pay bills, sweetheart. David comes from a respected family. He has a house, a future. You'll thank me one day. I could go to college, teach maybe. I can work part-time. Work." Susan laughed coldly. "You? With what experience? You're just like your father, always dreaming, never doing. Don't you see I'm trying to save you from mediocrity?" Anna's throat burned. "You mean from yourself?" she said before she could stop it. The slap came so fast it barely registered, just the sound sharp and final. Susan's voice dropped to a hiss. "Don't you dare talk to me like that. You'll meet him tomorrow and you'll smile. That's final." When the door slammed, the house fell silent again. Paul hovered outside her room, but didn't knock. He wanted to say something, anything but cowardice, polished by years of submission, held him back. Anna lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, counting the tiny cracks above her. They reminded her of herself. Thin, fragile, spreading quietly until one day everything would give way. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the old windows. She thought of David Trubman, the banker her mother called a real gentleman. She had seen him once from a distance, tall, confident, stepping out of a dark sedan in a tailored suit. He looked like someone who never had to ask permission for anything. Tomorrow she would meet him. Tomorrow, her life would be decided by people who would never have to live it. As the clock ticked past midnight, Anna whispered a single promise into the darkness. Not to her mother, not even to God, but to herself. If this is the path they choose for me, then I'll walk it. But one day, I'll find my own way out. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint rustle of wind through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, church bells marked the hour. Anna closed her eyes, and for a fleeting second, she imagined herself standing in front of a classroom, sunlight spilling over small desks, the sound of children laughing. Then reality returned like cold air through the cracks. Tomorrow would come, and she would sit at that dinner table, dressed in a borrowed smile. The arrangement had already been made. She simply hadn't signed her part yet. The restaurant in downtown Columbus gleamed with the kind of polish that made ordinary people nervous. Crystal chandeliers hung, like frozen rain, above tables dressed in white linen. and the air carried the faint scent of roasted duck and expensive wine. Anna Carter sat stiffly beside her mother, her hands folded in her lap, her heartbeat louder than the quiet jazz playing in the background. Susan Carter, elegant in her navy dress and pearls, checked her watch for the 5th time. "Sit up straight," she whispered without looking at her daughter. "And for heaven's sake, stop fidgeting. He'll be here any minute." Across the table, Paul Carter offered Anna a gentle, apologetic smile. He had worn his best jacket, one that still smelled faintly of chalk dust from his classroom. He didn't belong in places like this, and he knew it. Neither did Anna. Then, a voice came from behind them, smooth, confident. "Mrs. Carter? Mr. Carter? Anna." They turned. David Trubman was taller than Anna expected, his tailored gray suit fitting him like it had been sewn directly onto his skin. His dark hair was slicked back, his watch gleaming under the chandelier's light. He looked composed, practiced, like someone who always knew how much space he took up in a room. For a brief moment, relief washed over Anna. He wasn't old. He wasn't crude or unpleasant. He smiled when he greeted her, and when he shook her hand, his grip was warm, assured. "Anna," he said, his tone low and deliberate, "it's very nice to finally meet you. Your mother speaks highly of you." Anna blushed, unsure how to respond. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice almost lost in the clinking of glasses. They sat. A waiter appeared immediately, pouring wine for the adults, water for Anna. The conversation began the way polite conversations always did, with talk of business, family, and the weather. Susan spoke the most, painting her daughter as graceful, modest, and well-raised. David listened with polite interest, occasionally nodding or smiling. He studied Anna the way a collector studies a rare painting, evaluating its lines, its colors, its potential to impress. He already knew who she was. Months ago, he had seen her at a charity event where local schools performed. She had been on stage, playing the piano for a group of children, her hair pulled back loosely, her dress plain but neat. There had been something fragile about her, something unspoiled, and David had been intrigued. Not by love, by the idea of ownership. Now, seeing her up close, he was certain. She was exactly the kind of woman who would never challenge him, never leave. "Do you like music?" he asked suddenly, turning to her. Anna looked up, surprised that he was speaking to her directly. "I do," she said softly. "I used to play the piano at school." He smiled. "I remember. You played beautifully." Her eyes widened. You were there." "Briefly. My company sponsored part of that event," he said smoothly. "You stood out." Anna felt her cheeks burn. The idea that he had noticed her made her heart race in a way she didn't understand. For the first time that evening, she smiled, a small, timid thing, but real. Susan caught it and looked triumphant, as if everything was unfolding according to plan. Dinner continued, and slowly, Anna's fear melted into something she mistook for excitement. David asked her questions about her favorite books, her plans, her dreams. She answered shyly, telling him about wanting to teach, about how she loved working with children. He nodded approvingly. "That's admirable," he said. "It's rare these days to find someone who values something more than ambition." The words sounded kind, but behind them was a quiet superiority, a man who already believed he was the answer to her life. When dessert arrived, Susan and Paul excused themselves for a moment to speak with the restaurant manager, leaving Anna and David alone. David leaned closer, his voice low. "I know this must be strange for you, but I hope you'll trust me, Anna. I'll take good care of you." She met his gaze. There was something commanding about it, and she didn't know whether to feel safe or trapped. I believe you," she whispered. He smiled, satisfied. Later, when they left the restaurant, the autumn air was cool and heavy with the scent of rain. David opened the car door for her, his hand resting lightly at her back. In the reflection of the glass, Anna saw her mother's proud smile, her father's silent discomfort, and her own face, half curious, half frightened. She didn't yet realize that what she thought was kindness was simply control in its most polished form. For now, she only knew that her heart was beating fast, and for the first time in weeks, she wasn't afraid. That illusion would be enough to lead her straight into the storm. The wedding was everything Susan Carter had ever dreamed of: crystal chandeliers, a 5-tiered cake, and enough champagne to make every guest forget how staged it all was. The ceremony took place in an old chapel on the outskirts of Columbus, its marble floors echoing with polished perfection. Susan basked in the compliments, her pearls catching the light as she told anyone who would listen how her daughter had married one of the most promising bankers in the city. Anna smiled when she was supposed to. She wore white satin, her hands trembling as she said her vows. David looked every bit the perfect groom. Steady voice, confident smile, eyes calm and unreadable. When he slipped the ring on her finger, the guest sighed. Only Paul Carter saw the stiffness in his daughter's shoulders, the way her smile never reached her eyes. For the first few months, David was almost kind. He took Anna to restaurants she'd never been to, bought her jewelry, left notes on her dresser that said things like, "You looked beautiful tonight," or "Proud to call you my wife." Susan called every day to ask how the fairy tale life was treating her, and Anna always replied, "It's good, Mom. Everything's good." But the fairy tale ended quietly. It didn't explode, it eroded. It began with the dinners. David stopped coming home on time. At first, he apologized. "Late meeting, sweetheart." But soon the excuses disappeared. The dinners went cold. Then came the smell of alcohol. Faint at first, then constant. His phone stayed face down, his voice sharper. One night, Anna made roast chicken, his favorite, set the table with candles and waited. By the time he arrived, it was past 10. His tie was loose, his eyes dull. He glanced at the food and frowned. "Why are you still up?" he muttered, tossing his keys onto the counter. "I wanted us to eat together," she said softly. He sighed, opening a bottle of scotch. "You don't have to wait for me, Anna. You've got too much time on your hands." Her throat tightened. "I thought you might be tired." "I just wanted to what?" he snapped. "Play house? You're not my mother." The words cut deeper than he realized. From that night on, Anna learned to speak less. She started timing her days around his moods. If he came home in silence, she didn't ask questions. If he laughed, she smiled back. Every gesture became a calculation. How to keep peace. How to avoid the cold weight of his disapproval. The house was beautiful, but it didn't feel alive. Its rooms were filled with things: imported rugs, crystal vases, expensive furniture, but no warmth. Anna would walk through them in her slippers, the sound of her own footsteps echoing like a reminder. She was here, but not seen. Sometimes, when David left for work, she would open the windows just to hear something real. The sound of traffic, birds, anything human. The air would sting her skin, sharp and cold. But it was the only moment she felt awake. At night, she lay beside him while he scrolled through his phone or fell asleep, half drunk. She would stare at the ceiling, tracing shadows across the plaster, remembering the girl who once wanted to teach, who believed love could be gentle. That girl was gone now, replaced by someone who measured love by the silence that followed an argument. Once she tried to bring it back. She left a note in his briefcase: "I miss us." He never mentioned it. When Susan visited, she still bragged about her daughter's perfect life. "You're lucky, Anna," she said one afternoon. "Men like David don't come along twice." Anna smiled faintly and nodded. But when her mother left, she sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes looked older, emptier. The marriage that had begun with promise had settled into something worse than loneliness. It had become quiet despair, the kind that grew roots in the dark. Outside, the street lights flickered. Inside, Anna learned to move like a ghost through her own life, careful not to make a sound. 6 months into the marriage, winter arrived early in Columbus. The air was sharp with frost, the days shorter, the silence heavier. Anna Carter stood in the bathroom of the big, cold house, staring at the small white stick in her trembling hand. 2 faint pink lines appeared, and for the first time in months she smiled. She pressed a hand to her stomach, whispering, "You're real." For a moment, the world seemed to tilt back toward hope. Maybe this was the miracle she needed. Maybe a child would remind David of tenderness, of family, of everything they had once pretended to share. All afternoon, she planned how to tell him. She cooked his favorite dinner: steak, mashed potatoes, and pecan pie. She even ironed his shirts, the smell of starch and vanilla candles mixing in the kitchen. By 6, the table was set, candles flickering, soft music playing. She imagined his surprise, maybe even a smile. At 9, the front door opened. David stumbled in, the cold wind following him. His tie was crooked, his eyes glassy. The faint scent of whiskey hit her before his voice did. "What's this?" he muttered, looking at the table, the flowers, the effort. "Anniversary I forgot about." "No," she said quietly. I wanted to tell you something." He dropped his coat on the chair, poured himself another drink, and leaned back against the counter. "Make it quick. It's been a long day." Her heart thudded painfully. "David, I'm pregnant." The words floated in the air, fragile and full of hope. For a moment, he didn't react. Then he laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Pregnant?" He shook his head and took another drink. "That's just great." Anna blinked, confused. "I thought you'd be happy." "Happy?" He looked at her with something colder than anger. "Do you have any idea what kind of pressure I'm under at work? And now this? A baby? Another thing to worry about." Her voice broke. "It's not a thing, David. It's our child." He downed the rest of his drink and set the glass on the counter with a hard clink. "Wonderful. Another burden." Then he walked past her, heading upstairs. Anna stood frozen, the candlelight flickering across her face. The meal went untouched. The music kept playing softly, absurdly gentle against the quiet devastation in the room. That night, she sat at the kitchen table until the candles burned out. She held her stomach and cried silently, afraid to make a sound. Upstairs, she could hear him snoring. She told herself it didn't matter, that once he held the baby, everything would change. But it didn't. 9 months later, the hospital smelled of disinfectant and exhaustion. Anna lay in bed, weak but smiling faintly as she held a tiny, pink-faced baby in her arms. The nurse congratulated her, saying, "You have a beautiful baby girl." A girl. When David walked in, still in his suit, he didn't even look at Anna first. His eyes went straight to the bundle in her arms. "It's a girl," she said softly, hoping to find joy somewhere in his face. Instead, his jaw tightened. "A girl," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "You couldn't even give me a son." Anna stared at him, stunned. "David, please," he raised a hand sharply, cutting her off. "Save it." His voice rose, drawing looks from the hallway. "You've done enough already." The nurse stepped closer, frowning. "Sir, you need to lower your voice." David shot her a glare and stormed out, the door slamming behind him. The baby startled, letting out a soft cry. Anna's tears returned, but she forced herself to stay quiet. She pressed her lips against her daughter's forehead, whispering, "It's okay. I've got you." Outside, snow began to fall, slow, soundless, indifferent. By the time she was discharged, David hadn't come back. He didn't visit again for days. When he finally did, he stood by the window, hands in his pockets, and said flatly, "We'll name her Nina." Then he left before she could answer. That was the moment something inside Anna died. Not her hope, not yet, but her belief that love could be saved. She looked down at her baby, So small, so pure, and made a silent promise. If no one else will love you, I will love you enough for both of us. 2 years later, the house no longer felt like a home. The silence between Anna and David had become its own language. Cold, precise, impossible to break. The only sounds that filled the air were the faint hum of the refrigerator and Nina's small footsteps running through the hallway. David had stopped hiding his affair months ago. Everyone in Columbus's financial circles knew about Angela Prescott, the striking, confident daughter of a wealthy developer who had recently joined the same charity board as David. She was everything Anna wasn't. Outspoken, glamorous, perfectly aware of her power. And David seemed addicted to her shine. He came home late, smelling of expensive perfume and liquor. Sometimes he didn't come home at all. When Anna asked, he would shrug and say, "Meetings ran long." But there were no meetings that lasted until dawn. One Friday evening, as the rain drummed against the windows, she finally gathered the courage to ask. Nina was asleep in her room, clutching her stuffed bear. The house was still. "David," Anna began carefully, "I think we need to talk." He didn't look up from his laptop. "About what?" "About us," she whispered. "You've been gone almost every night. People talk. They say you're—" He slammed the laptop shut, the sound echoing across the marble counter. "They say what?" She flinched. "They say you're seeing someone. Angela Prescott." His eyes flashed. "And what if I am?" he said, stepping closer. "What's it to you?" Anna's breath caught. "I'm your wife." "Wife." He laughed bitterly. "You stopped being that a long time ago. Look at you, Anna. You're boring. You don't belong in my world anymore." Her voice trembled. "You promised." He grabbed her arm, his grip hard. "I promised to give you a good life. I've done that. You've got a roof, money, a kid. What more do you want?" "I wanted a husband," she said, her tears spilling. Something in him snapped. "Then go find one," he shouted, shoving her backward. She hit the corner of the table, pain searing through her ribs. He pointed toward the stairs. "Take the kid and get out of my house. I don't care where you go." Anna stared at him, disbelief turning to fear. "You don't mean that." "I mean every word." His voice was flat, cold, final. That night, she lay awake beside Nina's bed, listening to the rain and the sound of David pacing downstairs. She didn't sleep. When dawn came, the air was heavy with silence. David appeared at the door, car keys in hand. "Get dressed," he said. "We're leaving." She didn't argue. She wrapped Nina in a blanket, packed a small suitcase, and followed him to the car. They drove for hours. The highway stretched endlessly through fog and forest. The radio silent. Nina slept in the back seat, clutching her mother's hand. After nearly 4 hours, David turned off onto a narrow dirt road winding into the Appalachian foothills. The asphalt gave way to gravel, then to mud. Finally, they stopped in front of a weathered cabin at the edge of a wooded hill. "This is it," he said curtly. Anna blinked. "What do you mean?" He threw a set of keys onto the porch. "It's yours now. House is paid for. You wanted space, now you have it." "David, please," she whispered. "You can't just leave us here." He looked at her with a detached calm. "You'll manage. You always do." Then he got back in the car. The engine roared to life, gravel flying under the tires. Anna chased after him, shouting his name. But the sound of the car faded down the mountain road until it was gone. The silence that followed was unbearable. The wind cut through her coat, and the trees creaked like old bones. Nina began to cry, clinging to her leg. Anna sank to her knees, holding her daughter tight. Her tears soaked into Nina's hair. The little girl's voice trembled. "Mommy, are we staying here?" Anna looked at the cabin, the broken shutters, the cracked door, the roof caving at one corner. Then she looked down the empty road where the man she once loved had disappeared. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We're staying." and for the first time, she understood what it meant to be truly alone. The wind cut through the Appalachian Valley like a blade. By the time the sun disappeared behind the ridges, the cold had seeped into everything, into Anna's bones, into Nina's tiny hands clutching her sleeve, into the silence that followed David's car disappearing down the road. They had no idea where they were. The old cabin stood crooked against the tree line, its roof half caved, windows patched with cardboard. When Anna pushed the door open, dust rose in clouds. The air smelled of rot and damp wood. Nina whimpered, "Mommy, it's dark." "I know, baby." Anna knelt, pulling her close. "We'll figure it out." But she didn't know how. The crunch of footsteps startled her. From the bend in the dirt road, a small woman in a wool coat appeared, holding a lantern that cast a trembling halo of light. Her gray hair was tucked under a knitted hat, her face lined but kind. "You folks lost?" the woman asked, her voice calm, carrying warmth even in the freezing air. Anna hesitated, her breath visible in the cold. "My husband left us here, said this house is ours." The woman frowned, glancing at the broken porch. "This place? Lord have mercy." She set down the lantern and extended a gloved hand. "Name's Sarah Simmons. Been living just down the hill. Come on, honey. You can't stay here tonight. You'll freeze." Anna's first instinct was to refuse, to insist she'd manage. But the truth was written all over her shivering body. She nodded weakly. "Mrs. Simmons guided them through the snow to her own cottage, a small, warm home that smelled of pine and cinnamon. The light from the fireplace painted the walls gold. She brought out blankets, wrapped Nina in one, and handed Anna a steaming mug of tea. "Now," Mrs. Simmons said, settling into her chair, "tell me what happened." At first, Anna could barely speak, but something about the woman's steady gaze, patient, unjudging, broke through the wall she'd built inside. Words spilled out in fragments. The marriage, the betrayal, the night David drove them away. By the time she finished, her tea had gone cold. Mrs. Simmons said nothing for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and took Anna's hand. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "if the Lord brought you here, He didn't do it to abandon you. Maybe He's giving you a reason to stay." Anna's eyes filled again, but this time the tears didn't burn. That night, Mrs. Simmons made up a bed for them near the fireplace. Nina fell asleep instantly, her tiny fingers still clutching the edge of her blanket. Anna lay awake, listening to the quiet crackle of burning wood, feeling, for the first time in years, safe. When morning came, pale sunlight spilled across the floorboards. Mrs. Simmons was already up, frying eggs, humming an old hymn. "You'll want to get that house cleaned up," she said, setting plates on the table. "We'll get some folks from town to help. I'll call Reverend Thomas. He knows everyone. And the post office is hiring part-time. I'll put in a word for you." Anna blinked. "You do that? For a stranger?" Mrs. Simmons smiled. "Honey, everyone's a stranger until you sit down and share a meal. Eat up. You'll need your strength." That day, Mrs. Simmons introduced Anna to the small circle of townspeople who lived along the ridge. Farmers, a retired teacher, a carpenter. By afternoon, a few of them were already at the old cabin, sweeping, mending windows, hauling out broken furniture. Anna worked alongside them, her hands raw from scrubbing, her muscles aching. But with each stroke of the brush, each nail hammered into place, something inside her began to mend too. As the sun dipped low and painted the mountains in gold, she stood outside, looking at the repaired front steps. Nina played with Daisy, the stray dog Mrs. Simmons had brought for her to pet. For the first time since that drive into exile, Anna let herself breathe deeply. Maybe this wasn't the end of her story after all. Spring came gently to the hills, softening the harsh edges of winter. The snow melted into clear streams that wound their way through the fields, and the air smelled faintly of rain and pine. Anna Carter stood on the porch of the little cabin, watching the fog lift from the valley. For the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel cruel. It felt clean. Her days had found a rhythm, slow, steady, and hers alone. Each morning, she walked into town with Nina, her daughter's small hand tucked inside her own. Nina had started school that winter, shy at first, but quickly winning the affection of her teachers with her gentle manners and sharp curiosity. She came home every afternoon with stories about spelling bees, art projects, and a teacher who said she had the best handwriting in class. Anna worked part-time at the post office, sorting letters and helping customers at the counter. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave her purpose. She liked the predictability of it, the steady hum of the sorting machines, the friendly chatter of neighbors who came to mail packages or pick up their pension checks. People in town had come to know her name. They smiled when they saw her. One afternoon, as she was walking home, she heard a faint whimper near the ditch that bordered the road. She stopped, crouched down, and saw a small dog tangled in an old fishing net, its fur matted and dirty. "Oh, sweetheart," Anna murmured. "Hold on." She pulled out her pocket knife and carefully cut the tangled threads. The dog, no bigger than a loaf of bread, trembled in her hands but didn't bite. It looked up at her with dark, trusting eyes. When she carried it home, Nina gasped with delight. "Mommy, is it ours?" "We'll see," Anna said with a smile. "She's hurt. We'll take care of her first." They cleaned the dog, wrapped its paw, and fed it scraps of bread and warm milk. By evening, it was curled up by the fire, snoring softly. Nina named her Daisy. From then on, Daisy became part of their little family, following Nina to school, waiting by the post office steps for Anna, curling at their feet in the evenings as they read by lamplight. The house, once so quiet, now echoed with the sound of laughter and tiny footsteps. On weekends, Anna would put on an old record player Mrs. Simmons had lent her, a scratched vinyl of classic waltzes, and clear space in the living room. "Come on, my love," she'd say, holding out a hand to Nina. Together, they danced, clumsy at first, then graceful. Nina giggled as her mother twirled her around, her bare feet barely touching the floor. "Like this, baby," Anna would whisper. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Sometimes, when the light hit just right, she could almost see the version of herself she used to be, the young woman who once dreamed of teaching dance, before life taught her something else entirely. Mrs. Simmons often stopped by on Sundays, bringing pies or wildflowers from her garden. "You're blooming again, child," she'd say with a wink. "Told you the Lord had a reason for keeping you here." Anna would smile and nod, though she wasn't sure yet what that reason was. All she knew was that her heart no longer ached the way it used to. Each evening, she sat on the porch with a cup of tea while Nina and Daisy chased fireflies across the yard. The mountains glowed purple in the fading light, and the air was filled with the sound of crickets and distant laughter from the town below. She realized that peace didn't come with grand gestures or miracles. It came in moments like this: a child's laughter, a dog's warm breath on her hand, the quiet certainty that she had survived, and that life, somehow, still had music in it, for the first time in years. Anna didn't feel like she was waiting for something to change. She simply lived. By the time autumn rolled around, the little Appalachian town had become a patchwork of gold and crimson. The air smelled of baked apples and wood smoke, and the local elementary school was buzzing with excitement for its annual fall harvest dance. For weeks, Nina practiced in the living room, bare feet brushing across the worn floorboards, her laughter mingling with the scratchy hum of the old record player. Anna watched from the doorway, her heart swelling with pride. The girl moved like music itself, light, graceful, and full of life. "You're sure you want to perform alone?" Anna asked one evening as Nina spun in a circle, her skirt fluttering. Yes, Nina said, grinning. You taught me. That's all I need. The words lodged gently in Anna's heart. It had been years since anyone had said she was enough. On the evening of the event, the school auditorium was filled with families, teachers, and townsfolk carrying pies and casseroles. Paper leaves and orange ribbons hung from the ceiling. A small stage stood at the front, where the children were to perform their dances. Anna sat in the second row, clutching Daisy's leash and trying not to fidget. Mrs. Sarah Simmons sat beside her, whispering, "That little girl's going to steal the show." When Nina's name was called, Anna felt her pulse quicken. Her daughter stepped onto the stage in a simple blue dress, her hair tied back with a ribbon. The music began, a slow waltz that grew into a lilting melody. And then Nina danced. Every movement was deliberate yet effortless, as if the music flowed straight through her bones. The audience went silent. Children who had been fidgeting stopped mid-whisper. Even the principal leaned forward. When the final note faded, there was a heartbeat of stillness, and then applause erupted, loud and sincere. Nina bowed deeply, her cheeks flushed with joy, and ran off the stage straight into her mother's arms. "You were perfect," Anna whispered, hugging her tight. Among the clapping crowd stood a man near the back, tall, slightly stooped, with silver at his temples and a cane resting beside him. He had watched the entire performance with quiet concentration, and now he was walking toward them. "Excuse me," he said, his voice smooth but edged with fatigue. "That was extraordinary." Anna turned, startled. "Oh, thank you. She's been practicing for weeks." The man smiled, his eyes kind but sharp with recognition. "She's got natural rhythm and training. Someone's taught her more than just steps." Anna blushed faintly. "I just showed her a few things I remembered from school." He nodded slowly. "I'm Robert Hayes. I run a dance studio in Cleveland. Used to perform professionally until an injury made me switch sides of the stage." He tapped his cane lightly for emphasis. "We're opening a new children's program. Something creative, nurturing. We could use someone like you." Anna blinked. "Me?" He studied her for a moment. "You have an instinct for it. You've passed it on to your daughter without even realizing." She hesitated, caught between disbelief and a sudden flutter of hope. "I haven't danced in years." "Then maybe it's time you started again," he said simply. Mrs. Simmons, who had been quietly listening, leaned forward with a grin. "You hear that, Anna? The Lord's knocking again. Don't you dare pretend you didn't hear him this time." Laughter rippled through them, easing the weight of the moment. Robert handed Anna a business card. "Think about it. We're hosting auditions next month in Cleveland. I'd be happy to see you there. You've got something real, Mrs. Carter. Don't let it go to waste." When he walked away, Anna stood still for a long time, turning the card over in her hand. The print read Hayes Dance Academy, Cleveland, Ohio. That night, as she tucked Nina into bed, the little girl whispered, "Mommy, do you think we'll ever dance on a big stage?" Anna brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "Maybe, sweetheart. Maybe sooner than we think." Outside, the wind rustled the trees, scattering the first fallen leaves across the porch. For the first time in years, Anna didn't feel trapped by the past. She felt something entirely new, possibility. 3 years later, Cleveland was a different world. Louder, faster, brighter. But inside Hayes' dance studio, time seemed to move to its own rhythm. The space was filled with mirrors, the soft thud of shoes on polished floors, and the kind of laughter that came from children discovering something beautiful for the first time. Anna Carter stood near the piano, counting softly as her students practiced. 1, 2, 3, good, Mia, keep your shoulders up. She moved among them with gentle precision, correcting postures, praising effort, and smiling every time one of them caught the rhythm on their own. When class ended, the children ran off, their sneakers squeaking across the floor. The studio emptied, leaving behind only music sheets, stray ribbons, and sunlight slanting through the tall windows. Anna picked up the pieces, humming softly to herself. "You've got them dancing better than I ever could," a voice said from the doorway. She turned to see Robert Hayes, leaning lightly on his cane, watching her with that same calm warmth that had defined him since the day they met. Anna smiled. "You give me too much credit. You're the one who built this place." He chuckled. "Built it, yes, but you gave it life." Over the years, their friendship had grown naturally, quietly like ivy climbing a wall. Robert had offered her the job, a small apartment above the studio, and a salary that made stability possible for the first time. Nina had flourished in Cleveland, attending a nearby school and spending her afternoons sketching costumes for her mother's students. Still, there were days when Robert's limp worsened, when the pain in his back made him wince even as he smiled. Anna noticed everything. One evening, after everyone had left, she found him sitting alone in his office, his hands gripping the edge of the desk, his face pale. "You're in pain again," she said quietly. He sighed, not bothering to deny it. "Old accident. Torn ligaments. Nerve damage. The doctors say surgery might fix it, or make it worse." Anna stepped closer. "You've spent your whole life helping others move. You deserve to move freely again." He looked at her, his eyes tired but kind. "You really think it's worth the risk?" She hesitated, then reached for his hand. "If there's a chance to dance without pain, even just to walk without fear, you should take it." That simple gesture changed something between them. From then on, their bond deepened, not with sudden confessions or stolen glances, but through quiet acts of care. She drove him to appointments, helped organize the studio's finances, made soup on his bad days. He, in turn, became her anchor, steady, patient, unafraid of her silences. One night, after Nina had gone to bed, Anna found Robert sitting at the piano, his fingers hesitating above the keys. "I used to play before performances," he said softly. "Helped me focus." "Play now," she urged. He did. The melody was slow and imperfect, but it filled the room with something tender. Anna stood beside him, eyes closed, letting the sound wash over her. For the first time in years, she felt at home. Not in a place, but in a moment. Weeks later, Robert decided to go through with the surgery. "You were right," he told her. "If I can teach these kids to be brave, I can't be a coward myself." The operation was long and complicated. Anna and Nina waited in the hospital lobby, hours stretching into days. Every time a nurse walked by, Anna's heart leapt. She barely slept, praying silently in the sterile, humming corridors. On the fourth day, just before dawn, a doctor approached. "He's awake," he said. When Anna entered the room, Robert was pale, hooked to monitors, but smiling weakly. "Did I miss rehearsal?" he joked. She laughed through her tears, taking his hand. "You scared us. Guess I still know how to make an entrance." Anna sat beside him, her eyes wet but bright. "Welcome back," she whispered. He squeezed her hand. "Thank you for not giving up on me." She smiled, her voice trembling. "I couldn't. You taught me how not to." Outside, the city began to wake, the first light reflecting off the frozen lake, the hum of buses and footsteps returning to the streets. For Anna, it felt like the world had started again, a new rhythm, a second life. 3 more years passed, and Cleveland had become the heartbeat of Anna's new life. The Hayes Dance Studio was thriving, now expanded into 2 locations. Anna managed the children's division, while Robert, fully recovered from his surgery, had returned to teaching occasional master classes. Nina, now 10, had inherited her mother's grace and her stepfather's calm confidence. It was a Friday evening in late summer when the 3 of them decided to celebrate. They chose a small Italian restaurant near the lakefront, one with warm lighting, checkered tablecloths, and a piano player tucked in the corner. Robert insisted they deserved a quiet night out. As they talked and laughed over plates of pasta and glasses of lemonade, Anna caught herself watching them, Robert listening intently to Nina's chatter about school, Nina gesturing animatedly with her fork, her laughter clear and bright. It felt like peace made tangible, fragile and real. Then the moment shifted. From across the room, the kitchen doors swung open, and a man in a stained apron stepped out, carrying a crate of dishes. Anna's breath caught in her throat before she even understood why. The man turned his head, and for the first time in nearly a decade, she saw David Trubman. He looked older, heavier, his once slick hair now dull and streaked with gray. The crisp arrogance he'd worn like a suit was gone, replaced by exhaustion. He didn't notice her at first, but when their eyes met, he froze mid-step, the tray tilting in his hands. The sound of shattering plates drew every gaze in the restaurant. "Sir, are you all right?" a waiter asked, but David didn't answer. His eyes stayed locked on Anna. Robert turned to her, his voice low. "Do you know him?" Before Anna could speak, Nina, ever perceptive, ever unguarded, looked up and said clearly, "That's him. That's my father." The entire room fell silent. David's mouth opened, closed again. "Nina," his voice was hoarse, uncertain. "You've grown so much." The little girl stared back, unflinching. "You left us. You left me and Mom in that broken house." A ripple of whispers moved through the restaurant. One of the waiters gently pulled David aside, but he shook his head. His face was red, his eyes wet. "Anna, I didn't know what I was doing. I lost everything. Angela, she left. The business failed. I was stupid." Anna sat still for a long moment, her fingers wrapped lightly around her napkin. Then, softly, she said, "No, David, you were cruel. There's a difference." He lowered his head. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Anna looked at him, truly looked. Once, this man had held the power to break her. Now he was just another weary soul trying to gather the pieces of his own ruin. Her voice was calm, even tender. "The house you left us in, it's still yours. I don't need it anymore." He looked up, startled. You'd give it back?" She nodded once. "I have a home now, a real one." There was no bitterness in her tone, no triumph, just peace. Nina reached across the table and Anna took her hand. On the other side, Robert did the same. Together they rose. As they walked toward the door, the light from the setting sun poured through the restaurant windows, wrapping them in gold. Anna glanced back once. David stood there among the broken dishes, small and silent, watching them leave. Outside, the air smelled of rain and summer grass. The lake shimmered in the distance, and the world felt weightless. Robert slipped his arm around her shoulders. Nina laughed as Daisy, now graying but loyal as ever, barked from the car. Anna smiled. "Let's go home," she said. They walked together into the sunset. Three souls bound not by pain, but by the quiet miracle of having survived it. Sometimes what looks like exile is simply destiny clearing a path for freedom, for love, for peace.